Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: can America handle 2 wars, and maybe a third? Politics poses the biggest threat to economic growth in China. 2 key figures removed from office in major leadership reshuffle. China announces removal of defense minister, 2 months after he was last seen in public. China ousts defense chief and removes ex-top envoy from cabinet. Can America handle 2 wars, and maybe a third? Economist. The U.S. is deploying military forces to the Middle East in response to escalating tensions in the region. The deployment comes as violence between Israel and Hamas intensifies, and there are concerns that the conflict could spread further. The U.S. is sending aircraft carriers, warships, and troops to the region, sending a strong message to both Iran and Israel. While the U.S. aims to deter Iran and its proxies from further aggression, it also wants to reassure Israel that it is not alone and that the U.S. will support it. The situation in the Middle East is becoming increasingly dangerous, and there are fears that the conflict could escalate further. This presents a significant challenge for President Joe Biden, who is now facing the possibility of becoming a wartime president. Biden has stated that American leadership and alliances are crucial for maintaining peace and stability in the world. However, doubts remain about the U.S. ability to maintain its position as a global power. Some argue that the world has become more multipolar, with several power centers emerging. The U.S. remains a military and economic powerhouse, accounting for a significant portion of global defense spending and having a strong economy. However, its soft power and influence have diminished in recent years. The U.S. is still seen as the indispensable nation in the Middle East, but it is facing challenges in the region. Arab leaders have recently cancelled meetings with Biden, and there are concerns about the U.S. credibility and capacity to defend its allies. In addition, the U.S. chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan has raised questions about its reliability as an ally. The U.S. must also address its own internal challenges, such as congressional paralysis and the polarization of American society. Despite these challenges, Biden is seeking to revitalize alliances and strengthen American leadership. The situation in the Middle East presents a test of his leadership and the U.S. ability to navigate a complex and dangerous global landscape. Politics poses the biggest threat to economic growth in China. Financial Times. China's rapid rise in GDP and GDP per capita is facing several challenges, including external hostility from the U.S. and its allies, a shift to a more balanced economy, and the relationship between the communist state and the capitalist economy. These challenges, particularly the political constraints, could prevent China from continuing its rapid growth and potentially lead to conflict or being caught in the middle-income trap. The impact of trade policy actions by the U.S. has been limited, but restrictions on technology could hinder the economy's performance. Additionally, the governance complexities and lack of delegation under Xi Jinping's rule could undermine China's economic dynamism. The biggest questions about China's economic future are political, including its relationship with the U.S. and its own governance, as well as the ability to shift the economy away from excessive investment and towards higher consumption. 2 key figures removed from office in major leadership reshuffle. The Guardian. China has removed its defense minister, Li Shangfu, from its cabinet in a major reshuffle of top leadership, according to state media. The news comes after the abrupt removal of ex-foreign minister Qin Gang from office in July without explanation. Both ministers are believed to have been personally selected for their roles by President Xi Jinping. Reports in the U.S. had suggested that Li was under investigation and had been stripped of his ministerial duties, but China had refused to comment. Experts suggest that the removals highlight uncertainty around China's top leadership. China announces removal of defense minister, 2 months after he was last seen in public. Diplomat. China has removed Defense Minister General Li Shangfu from office, following his disappearance from public view for almost 2 months. This comes after former Foreign Minister Qin Gang was removed from office in July with no explanation offered. The disappearances have raised questions about the resilience of President Xi Jinping's circle of power. Li is under U.S. sanctions related to overseeing weapon purchases from Russia, and this has led China to cut off contacts with the U.S. military. 4 generals from the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force were also removed from their posts over the summer. China ousts defense chief and removes ex-top envoy from cabinet. Japan Times. Chinese Defense Minister Li Shangfu has been removed from his positions as defense chief and state counselor, state-run media said Tuesday. President Xi Jinping signed a decree to remove Li from the positions, though no reason was given for the dismissal or a replacement named. Former Foreign Minister Qin Gang, who was removed from his position in August, was also stripped of his state counselor post. Hong Kong may seek to kickstart ailing property market in policy address. Reuters. Hong Kong's chief executive, John Lee, is expected to announce lower stamp duties for property transactions in an annual policy statement. The move is aimed at stabilizing an economy that has been impacted by mass emigration and economic weakness on the mainland. The property market, a major pillar of the economy, has seen home prices fall 13%, and transaction volumes have shrunk amid weak sentiment. Lee is also expected to emphasize the importance of maintaining a tight national security grip, which is a priority for Chinese leader Xi Jinping. China puts best foot forward at Milestone Belt and Road Forum. South China Morning Post. The Third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation concluded on April 29 in Beijing, where security was significantly tightened for the event. The Chinese leadership touted the two-day summit as another milestone for the Belt and Road Initiative, having delivered far more than the previous one held in 2019. Speaking at the opening ceremony, President Xi Jinping pledged the equivalent of $107 billion to the project for the next 5 years as part of an 8-point action plan, matching a commitment given over the same timescale in 2017. However, leaders of major Western countries were absent, except Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. Italy, Switzerland, Greece and the Czech Republic had all sent their top representatives to both the 2017 and 2019 summits, but not this year. Italy was considering quitting the initiative by the end of 2023, just 4 years after it became the first member of the Group of Seven, G7, to sign on to the scheme, with the Italian defense minister saying earlier this year that joining the Belt and Road Initiative was an atrocious decision. In a break from the previous 2 summits, the forum did not hold a roundtable session nor produce a joint communiqué, instead issuing a chair's statement. Compared with 10 years ago when it was first unveiled, the Belt and Road scheme finds itself in a more challenging situation both at home and abroad. An increasing number of critics, especially in Washington and some other Western countries, have accused Beijing of engaging in debt trap diplomacy, leaving countries saddled with loans they cannot afford. There has also been emerging skepticism about the long-term sustainability of the project, on the grounds of China's economic slowdown. China's top diplomat to visit U.S. ahead of possible Xi trip. Japan Times. China's top diplomat, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, will visit Washington this week, marking the first time in 5 years that a high-ranking Chinese official has traveled to the U.S. capital. The visit is seen as laying the groundwork for a meeting between Chinese leader Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden next month. Wang will meet with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to discuss various bilateral, regional, and global issues, with the aim of managing the U.S.-China relationship and maintaining open communication channels. For lost years, how the EU fumbled its response to China's Belt and Road. South China Morning Post. Internal documents and conversations with sources involved in the EU's infrastructure discussions reveal that the European Commission fought against using connectivity as a foreign policy tool, despite launching the Global Gateway Infrastructure Drive as an alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative. EU leaders will gather in Brussels this week to discuss the project, which has been plagued by bureaucracy, infighting, and inaction. Documents reveal conflicting European attitudes toward China's growing influence in the developing world, with some officials opposing a connectivity strategy out of fear of sending the wrong signal to Beijing. The rejected proposal that contained much of the same rationale as Global Gateway was seen as a failure by some departments within the European Commission. The rejection of the proposal led to a lack of clarity and an identity crisis for Global Gateway, which has been described as a marketing exercise rather than a coherent foreign policy tool. The lack of a single point of contact has left the project rudderless, and despite promises of strategic investment, many early projects are merely rebadged existing ones. The EU's development arm, DG INTPA, has struggled to deliver on the initiative and has clashed frequently with the EU's geopolitical camp. Calls for the appointment of a specialist commissioner or a single point of contact have been ignored, and other countries have expressed a desire for strategic investment rather than handouts. While some see progress in the 87 projects announced this year, others argue that many of these predate Global Gateway and question their strategic value. The initiative's slow progress and lack of clarity have led to criticism and frustration. However, some believe that things are finally changing, albeit slowly, and that progress is being made. Why Smart Leaders Do Stupid Things. Foreign Affairs. In their book, How States Think, The Rationality of Foreign Policy, political scientists John Mearsheimer and Sebastian Rosato argue that many decisions made by states are rational, despite seeming irrational to outside observers. They claim that leaders think in terms of balance of power theory and make decisions based on their perceived strategic interests. However, critics argue that the book fails to establish a compelling definition of rationality and overlooks the influence of psychology and other factors on decision-making. They also point out that leaders may hold multiple theories and motivations simultaneously, making it difficult to determine which decisions are truly rational. The author's definition of deliberation is also flawed, as it does not adequately account for biases and groupthink that can occur in decision-making processes. Overall, while the book raises important questions about the role of rationality in international relations, it falls short in providing convincing arguments and evidence to support its claims. Well, folks, it seems like there's never a dull moment in the world of geopolitics. As tensions rise in the Middle East, the US is deploying military forces to the region, potentially facing the challenge of handling not just one, but two wars, and maybe even a third. President Biden is facing the possibility of becoming a wartime president, and the situation in the Middle East is becoming increasingly dangerous. Can America handle this complex and dangerous global landscape? Well, that remains to be seen. Meanwhile, in China, politics is posing a threat to its economic growth. The country is facing external hostility from the US and its allies, and there are concerns about its shift to a more balanced economy and the relationship between the communist state and the capitalist economy. These challenges, particularly the political constraints, could prevent China from continuing its rapid growth and potentially lead to conflict or being caught in the middle-income trap. The biggest questions about China's economic future are political, and it remains to be seen how the country will navigate these challenges. In other news, China has been going through a major leadership reshuffle, with key figures being removed from office. This has raised questions about the resilience of President Xi Jinping's circle of power and has led to uncertainty around China's top leadership. And in Hong Kong, the chief executive is expected to announce measures to kickstart the ailing property market, which has been impacted by mass emigration and economic weakness on the mainland. Moving on, the Belt and Road Initiative has been in the spotlight again, as China hosted the Third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation. However, major Western countries were absent from the event, raising doubts about the long-term sustainability of the project and accusations of debt trap diplomacy. The initiative finds itself in a more challenging situation than it did 10 years ago when it was first unveiled, with an increasing number of critics questioning China's motives and the economic viability of the project. On a brighter note, China's top diplomat is visiting the US, marking the first high-level visit in 5 years and laying the groundwork for a potential meeting between Chinese leader Xi Jinping and US President Joe Biden. The aim is to manage the US-China relationship and maintain open communication channels, which is crucial for stability in the global arena. And finally, the EU has been fumbling its response to China's Belt and Road Initiative. Internal documents and conversations reveal that the European Commission has been hesitant to use connectivity as a foreign policy tool, leading to a lack of clarity and an identity crisis for its alternative initiative, the Global Gateway. The slow progress and lack of clarity have led to criticism and frustration, but some believe that progress is being made. So, folks, there you have it. A whirlwind of news from around the world. The challenges are great, the stakes are high, and the future is uncertain. But one thing is for sure, we'll be here, keeping an eye on it all and bringing you the latest updates. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those questions coming. What are your thoughts on these developments? Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.